You know, of all the plants in Plants vs Zombies 2, the walnut has to be my favourite. His sturdy disposition in the face of unyielding agony is so much cooler than throwing cabbages or whatever this is. Plus, he's just a cool looking guy. My love for the walnut got me thinking, can you beat Plants vs Zombies 2 with just walnuts? No, absolutely not, that's ridiculous. But then I thought, can you beat Plants vs Zombies 2 with just nuts? It'll be brutal, but that's exactly what I'm attempting to do. Before I get into it, let me lay the ground rules. I can't use any plants other than nuts. That means no sun producing plants will be used in this challenge. No leveling nuts. This wasn't a feature back in my day, and I want to pretend that EA hasn't ruined everything. No power-ups, obviously, and I'll be skipping conveyor belt levels. If a level gives me unconsensual plants, I'm not going to make a big fuss about avoiding using them. This challenge is plenty hard enough as it is. That's it, that's the challenge, and it starts as soon as the game gives me access to the walnut. Our challenge begins on the third day of the tutorial. The game even welcomes me with a pre-planted walnut. Now you may be thinking, how do we even win with just walnuts? We just stall until all the zombies are on the screen and then we let the mowers rip. We don't actually have access to the shovel yet, so we just kind of sit around and wait for the zombies to finish their business. There isn't much more to say about the tutorial. We just breeze through it with walnut stall until we get the hot sauce. And man, I miss when Crazy Dave lusting over a taco was the funniest thing in the world to me. Things were simpler. Now we're in Egypt, the real challenge begins. Day 1 is a plant food tutorial, so we start off with pea shooter, which in retrospect I could have just shoveled up, but it gets eaten anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Now we just lay back and walnut stall until I notice the mowers respawn. That's really lame, but I suppose this is another tutorial, so whatever. Day 2 is the power up tutorial. Not that it matters, but in order of best to worst, snowballs, electric, fling. Fling's just too much work for me. Here's something I wasn't expecting. Already on day 3, I was fighting for my life. This level took me 15 tries to beat. The third level of this game took me over an hour to beat. It's probably worth noting now that I'm not much of a PvZ2 gamer, okay? I mostly played the original game as a kid, so my gardening related reflexes need some work. The issue I was having on this level is I just couldn't stall out the zombies long enough to reach the final wave and wipe everything out. I mean, the mowers still respawn, so this level is actually technically impossible to fail, but I got so close to beating it authentically without any respawning mowers, it became tantalizing to me. I had to beat it with only one set of mowers or my ego would be shattered. I even came up with my own techniques just for this level. Firstly, I had to plant the walnuts exactly when they came off cooldown or the level was impossible. This involved memorising the lanes the zombies would appear in so I could pre-place the walnuts. Secondly, I used the strat that I like to call edging, where I let the sun-stealing zombies siphon the sun for as long as possible and then snatch it off them at the very last second, so they wasted their time standing there like a moron instead of chewing on my nuts. Even with these techniques, it was a nightmare, but after 40 minutes of attempts, I managed to clear the final wave with just one set of mowers. Extremely disheartened by that attempt, I was able to beat the stage after just over an hour. Having a level be this extremely difficult on just day 3 is worrying, as I know this is nothing on the difficulty of later levels. But you know what? I think this is the most fun I've ever had playing this game. Trying to optimize something as silly as walnut spam is just stupid fun to me. After this stage, I was very excited to move on. Day 4 was the first conveyor belt level. It gives you nuts, but not nearly enough. Skip. In day 5, we meet the walnut's natural predator, the torch zombie. This guy is to walnuts what the horrors of 2001 was to the Toys R Us giraffe. They make it impossible to stall out the level as he incinerates walnuts with just one touch. This unfortunately makes this level impossible. Except the game is telling me I won because of the respawning mowers. And I did so only placing walnuts, so you tell me in the comments if this counts. Moving on. Day 6 is another boring conveyor belt level. I genuinely find these such a chore to play. Day 7's a doozy. I initially thought it was possible as it's just regular zombies and camel zombies, which have a habit of forming polite orderly queues, making them no more threatening than regular zombies. But I got done in by the sheer amount of zombies. I can barely make it for a quarter of the way of this one. So is that it? The nut challenge already thwarted on day 7 of Egypt. What hope is there for later stages of the challenge if I can't beat the easiest levels in the game? You see, dear Nut Disciple, our salvation comes immediately after failed day 7, when we unlock the cash store. And hidden within the shop resides a plant so overlooked and mocked by the Plants vs Zombies community, they never thought they'd get their chance in the spotlight. Our silver bullet for this challenge, the peanut. Now you see, the peanut is diabetic, because he pee and nut at the same time. Having a plant that can clear chaff makes stalling infinitely better. Plus he has the same health as a regular walnut, so he's not too shabby at tanking zombies himself. On top of all of this, he's just a dapper looking bloke. Now all that's left is to get 100 gems. Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I had this whole joke planned out where I was going to watch ads until I got enough gems to buy the peanut, and then I was going to speed up the footage, maybe review some of the ads, make some jokes, tell you guys to subscribe to my channel as my own little advertisement. But the absolute state of this game's monetization is shocking. The things this game runs as ads just for a little bit of profit is absolutely disgusting. The first ad I got, which I'll heavily blur, is the most aggressive, seizure-inducing mess I've ever seen in my life. I couldn't tell you what's going on in this, it was killing my eyes. Is there no filtering process for airing these ads? After this one, I got a create your own anime AI waifu girlfriend, which is just blatantly predatory. Is the money generated from these ads really worth it? What an absolute mess of a company. I just verified my emails and got 100 gems that way. Day 8 starts with a demonstration on how to counter the dreaded torch zombies, and this would be great if I could use any of these plants. Other than that, this level was just a case of holding plant food for the torch zombies. Also, the sunsuckers are actually such a pain when you don't have any sun producing flowers. All the sun that drops is so important. Okay, so I rewatched day 9 3 times to find anything interesting to comment on. The unfair power of the peanut just makes some of these levels too trivial, but I'll tell you what I'll do. If I can't find a single interesting thing to comment on, I'll instead provide you with some interesting nut facts. Did you know that peanuts account for 2/3 of all nut consumption? Crazy. Day 10 was possibly the easiest level yet. I just mindlessly placed peanuts and won. Did you know that cashews are actually from the same plant family as poison ivy? They keep all of their itchy oils in their shells. I didn't even know plants had families. Day 11 didn't let me choose my plants, so we just skipped those. At this point, I was already starting to worry that the walnut had been completely outclassed and made redundant by the peanut. Thankfully, on day 12, I realised the walnut still had a crucial role to play in this challenge. Peanuts have a really slow recharge, and they're pretty expensive for what they are, so walnuts are crucial for buying time for me to get sun and place more peanuts. Day 13 and 14 present a new challenge for me writing this script, as both of these levels are incredibly dull, but I can't keep doubling up on nut facts, so from now on, I'll be alternating between helpful and fun nut facts and devious nut misinformation for you to spread online. So did you know that 40% of the world's almond supply are bought by chocolate manufacturers? And did you also know that cashews are definitely nuts and you only think they're seeds because that Tabasco song lied to you? If they're not nuts, why are they called cashew nuts? Day 15 was our first protection level, which my buddy the walnut kind of excels at. In day 16, I got to borrow a new nut. This guy is absolutely adorable, and the best part is he gets this tiny shield when he's given plant food. I'm in love, but aside from that, I can't actually tell what he does. He's twice the price of a walnut and less tanky. He doesn't seem to have any special effects either, he does nothing on death. I'm sure he does something as he's a premium plant, but beats me. I just wish the economy wasn't so bad that I had to rent a macadamia nut. This level was also the introduction of the buckethead zombie, which feels pretty late since we've already seen the sarcophagus zombies, but whatever. One plant food doesn't kill one of these bad boys, so that's annoying. Day 17 was a real snooze fest. It's the type of boring that makes you really start questioning whether a challenge like this will even translate into an interesting YouTube video. Anyway, did you know that people with peanut allergies aren't actually allergic to nuts, but instead they're allergic to the very concept of nuts? These people should be kept on leashes. Day 18 is a plan your defense stage, and I'm not really sure why, but these were always my favourite levels. This one in particular though is definitely not my favourite, as we're 50 sun short of having a nice even 3 rows of peanuts, and we have to settle for this monstrosity instead. Yuck. Day 19 limits us to only using 16 plants. I wish I could muster together 16 nuts in this sun-starved economy. We also have the mold colonies to consider, but again, this is an absolutely meaningless restriction. Despite this though, this was actually a pretty hard level. The zombies are really ramping up in difficulty a lot now. The walnut was a real champ here though, buying me enough time to plant peanuts and holding back bucketheads. I'm not really sure how to describe this. Day 20 wasn't difficult at all, but it felt difficult. Or maybe it just looked difficult. There were so many more zombies than normal, and they got pretty close to the flowers I was protecting. Plus there was a load of the dreaded torch zombies, but I did it first try and it wasn't particularly close. Maybe this just marks the beginning of a big difficulty spike. After a very easy day 21, we're rewarded with a trophy that grants us an additional 25 sun at the start of the level. This unfortunately is useless, as all nuts are priced in multiples of 50 and the sun also gives us 50. The additional 25 will literally never be spent, but thank you I guess. Day 22, despite being really easy, taught me that using plant food on nuts restores them to full health, just like with the walnut repair from the first game. This is especially important since when peanuts drop below a certain damage threshold, they lose half of their DPS. Peanut damage is already pitiful, so losing more of it can be devastating. And if I use the plant food at the last second just as a nut's about to be eaten, it's like getting a new nut for free, so this is a cool little tech for the nut arsenal. Day 23 was another very large difficulty spike. The zombies are now much more plentiful and the bucketheads in particular are so much more common now, which is a pain. This stage also marks the introduction of the gargantuas. These behemoths are tough in normal playthroughs of the game, but here's a gargantua taking on 4 peanuts and a plant food like it's nothing. I still beat the level first try, but this is a very worrying sign of things to come. I guess day 24 is our last challenge in Egypt, as Zomboss is a conveyor belt level. This level was another plan your defense stage, and again, look how rancid the setup is. It was very easy. After smoking the Zomboss with power up, since it doesn't really count, we're done with the first world. It feels a tad unceremonious. I wish we could have done Zomboss with peanuts, but even if we had the option, I doubt it would have been possible. Now that we've conquered ancient Egypt, here's my initial thoughts of the challenge. I kind of thought the first world wasn't even going to be possible, but other than the Kafka-esque experience on day 3, it wasn't too bad at all. Now I'm under no disillusion that the rest of the challenge will be this easy. I've done my homework and I know everyone blitzes Egypt in these challenges, but I'm feeling positive that I can beat the game with just nuts. I think my biggest surprise was not having sun producing flowers really wasn't that big of a hindrance. And even in the levels that gave us pre-planted sunflowers, it barely made a difference. It's really the long recharge of nuts that's the biggest issue. In fact, I was actually originally going to use sunflowers in this challenge, so I just thought it would be impossible otherwise, but I'm glad I chose not to use them. Half the levels in Egypt were literally only possible because the game's a bit zealous with how much plant food it gives you. My biggest concern is if the game dries up on plant food, I'm pretty screwed. And finally, I think I'm just most excited to get more nuts for the sake of variety. Right, that's all for part 1. Part 2 will be out in a couple of days, and subscribe to make a little goblin stream come true. Thank you very much for watching, cheers.